Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a very long time since I've made any kind of content related to Gladiator Beasts, probably almost a year now. But in the past couple of weeks, we know that Gladiator Beasts have been doing very well, having won a Ribbit and then a YCS just a week later, some of the biggest tournaments available to us. And I have in call with me right now the champions of those two events, who don't need any introduction, but I will ask them to introduce themselves. Anyways, Morph, if you want to go first, and then Jake, just talk about yourselves, where
Sure,
you're
sure,
at,
yeah.
things like
Sounds
that.
like you kind of did, but my name is Anthony Valenti, also known as Morph. Just won the UTW at Rhode Island,
Are you able to move
and
the mic close to your house, to your mouth?
oh, no, maybe I can. Is it
Perfect.
is it better now?
Look much better.
Right, yeah. So my name is Anthony Valenti, also known as Morph. I just won the UTW at Rhode Island, Providence, with Gladiator Beast.
Cool. And then Jake.
Yeah, and my name is Jake Mattern. I won the RBET Day 2 with Gladiator Beasts, and some of you might know me from I topped the original Shonen Jump Edison with Gladiator Beast as well. Got top 8.
He did. This guy was actually born with Gladiator Beast Bestiary in his hand. It was incredible. And yes,
Quite literally, right? Yeah.
yes, Tiger's here. So the deck is on some
Yeah,
hype
right.
mode right now. I think for the past year or so, it probably should have been. I want to talk a little bit about the history of the deck in terms of, the Edison revival that from basically 2020, about 2021, whenever Edison really started, up until the end of 2023. This deck was hated. This deck was absolutely hated. I have both your list on screen. We'll talk about that here in a second. Um, but it's hard to say why the deck was hated. I think I've talked about before that a lot of people believed for years that was just summon Gladiator Beast, set for back row, and then you had to play cards like Starlight Road. You had to have Solemn, or otherwise you were just gonna lose. And then they get blown out by Heavy Storm, or I guess Giant Trunade or whatever. And the players, for whatever reason, with Gladiator Beast were not able to play from the hand the way that they would play with basically any other deck. The Gladiator Beast has really bad stigma for being a summon GB set 3 or more back row and then just like praying. And that strategy usually doesn't work out. So I think it was around the end of 2023 that Jake, you and Murray kind of started posting online maybe a little bit more, or at least we got into a group together, some kind of Discord group or something. And that's where I saw it.
Yeah.
So I've been playing Gladiator Beast since about 2009 was when I really picked the deck up, when Rescue Cat was actually still at 2 copies. And the deck was, better back then probably than it is even during Edison because you have 2 Rescue Cats. But I think right away I kind of copied your list a little bit. I made a few changes, and I ended up getting top 4 with the YCS over at Indy. And I think and that actually started because I think it was you and Murray. Both of you did very well at tournaments at the beginning of 2024. I know Murray went to a tournament in Texas where he went 7-0 or something like that, or 6-1, and I think he got top 4 like a PlayStation 5 event or something. So really, it really
Mhm.
motivated me to kind of, hey, let's run this deck. And ever since then, the deck has been just on an absolute climb. So far, I would say it's probably we have the big three, and I would go so far to say it's like maybe even big four with Gladiator Beast, because the deck has very good interactions with the other top 3 decks. I know a lot of people hate on the Blackwing matchup, but I actually believe Gladiator Beast has a very good Blackwing matchup, and it's almost based on a die roll. But let's start here with, we have your builds that are, I don't want to say diametrically opposed, but they're definitely different in terms of more. You're on a Prisma build, Jake. You're on like more of a just Gladiator Beast control build, and I think the biggest difference outside of Prisma is going to be the utilization of Trapstun and Morph's build over Dust Tornado. And I think Trapstun's probably a little bit more positive, but Morph, if you could talk a little bit about why you chose this build and some of your choices, because I kind of want to talk about the difference of choices between your 2 decks, and then kind of go into where Gladiator Beast sitting. Why should players play Gladiator Beast? But yeah, if you want to talk about what you have on here, just a little
So
bit.
yeah, that's definitely there's a lot of things to touch on there. But if I'm just going to touch on why I chose my build, I actually didn't look at Jake's build until after I already won the YCS, and I was just kind of peeking around. So it was definitely cool to see that someone could have such a different take with running no Trapstun, running no Secutor in the main deck, and you're right in a way that 2 decks are kind of like yin and yang in that sense. But I personally just liked and chose the Trap Sun build with more Prisma because I felt like the ceiling was a little higher in my head, where like you start your playoff, let's say I summon a GB, it gets bottomless, you trap stun, and now for the rest of the turn, I pretty much know I could get Zaris, I could do all this stuff, and I'm gonna clean the whole board the second that trap stun flips up. So if it were, say, a dust tornado, and I'm just trying to kind of pierce through and get some back right of the way, I don't feel quite as comfortable to just rip a Gazaris into multiple back row. But if I can trap stun something and then open like a path forward, I just know I'm cleaning the game. You know what I mean? Like that's
Oh,
it.
for sure. No, I'm definitely. I do love Trapstone, and they do play differently. If I'm gonna kind of let's before we go too far, Jake. Why do you choose? I guess in this case, Dust Tornado over Trapstone, and then basically your build in general over the Prismas.
Yeah. So this has actually been like a culmination of the direction my builds moved in for the last like 2 years since getting back into Edison. Because when I started back in Edison, I just ended up first net decking my original deck list from the Shonen Jump, which was Prismaglads with Stratos, Rhoda, Ice-Sided Warrior Ladies. I do love the Warrior Lady interaction in the main deck you have in the main deck morph. I love Warrior Lady and Glads, especially with Rhoda there as a side deck. But I found myself in difference from the original Edison compared to now. Blackwings were a little more hyper prevalent, and Vayu wasn't very prevalent then. Neither was Hero Beat, even though it's really fallen off, but it's still around. But there's a higher focus on a lot of heavy trap decks in the format. Um, and I found myself more and more times struggling into those matchups when I'd play Prisma Stun GBs and I just didn't hit the right combination of cards. Like if I had the Prisma Tiger, but I never drew the Trap Stun, and all of a sudden my Prisma plays could never land because they always have the back rows, or vice versa. Or if I got into a limited scenario, I'd run into those situations where I have to summon a GB, swing, tag, they oppression, and I'm just like, fuck, I need a tag to bestiary when I really wanted to a quest. So I landed on Dust Tornado because I want to always be able to 1-for-1 an oppression and get my GV value on top of that. And then I also landed not on Prisma because I'm trying to play a longer game state. I'm sacrificing my ceiling to have a consistent late game to, like, in top deck mode, I'll always hit a live GB. That's at least the goal of my build.
Yeah, I do like the because I'm back on Dust Tornadoes. When I also topped, I was on triple Dust Tornado. I did side a Trapstone, but I do like the middle ground of one Prisma. But I think there's a lot to be said in terms of these decks, even though they look similar, except for honestly maybe like 5 or 6 cards, they do play a lot very differently in terms of having to preemptively use that Dust Tornado or just knowing when to save it for, like you said, like oppression or whatever it might be.
One
But like
thing
Trapstone.
too, not to push back at all, because I don't think I really am by saying it, but I do side to Dust Tornado, and they definitely come in every oppression matchup. So it's more like just
sure.
as many reasons I could deal with that card. I'm gonna throw it in.
Yeah,
But
we're mostly talking on
No,
just like game building.
I definitely agree. You need whatever outs you can get, right? Like I side the Twister, right, as you see. So like I try to make sure I have whatever outs I can get. So I definitely get that.
Yeah, but we talking about the differences, and I guess I don't have it up here, but there was also the Iatos list that won a Ribbit last year, Ribbit New York or something like that, and I think players in general are not high on Iatos, even a little bit, right? But when we look at it, what do we learn from Iatos? And I think what it really told us was this Iatos build, while being maybe a little bit strange, is that Gladiator Beast, outside of like maybe zombies, and this is maybe, they might have better graveyard recursion than any deck in the format, in the form of just Equesti and Darius. And I think that's something that's very special, that people don't look at Gladiator Beast and see it as a graveyard abuse deck, the way they see like Vayu or Light Sworn or whatever deck in Edison or Frogs or whatever.
I do agree.
This graveyard very heavily too.
I think that's half the reason Prisma is so good. Even if you're like, you can look at Prisma and say this is a really like high roll card. You're trying to go bestiary all day, but a lot of Prisma, because I think you can play GBs fast or slow, either build, and like go really high roll or just slow roll the game. But Prisma itself is pretty hefty monster. At worst, it dumps Laquari, which lets you play a longer, slower game if you want to add back with a quest later, or just set up a Herc later. You know, like it doesn't have to be
Yeah,
Smash Jazars all day.
for sure. No, and that's I usually play with one Prisma. I'm actually on no Prismas at the moment. Very close to Jake's build, maybe a few cards different. And my side deck is significantly different. Very prepped for almost entirely for the Blackwing matchup in general. But I guess my next point is what can we narrow down is like the Gladiator Beast engine in terms of what makes Gladiator Beast go. We've seen decks without Test Tiger, we've seen decks with Test Tiger. And I bring this up because it seems like Gladiator Beast legitimately only has maybe 20 cards, give or take, 20 to 25 cards that you need to run to be probably like a successful player, right? And that leaves a ton of room for skill expression and card choices for the next player.
I think that's the biggest takeaway with the Iatos build, because I don't want to sound like a hater. I haven't really played the Iatos builds enough to really give a real honest take, but I think it's more like the GB deck itself is pretty much good enough. You could stick in whatever you want after a certain point, and like you could do pretty good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
like.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the Eidos build is actually just like a testament to the example of when Gladiator Beasts were first top a Shonen Jump in 2008. I remember this. This was in Return Dad format, so a Dark Arm set just came out. Geyserus didn't exist. Darius didn't exist. A Quest didn't exist. Chariot didn't exist. It had no graveyard recursion at all. 2 top 8'd the Shonen Jump just by playing the tag in and out Wabaku strategy and Solemn Judgments. Like, that, if anything, just shows there is something to the engine in general of just being powerful, of being like a toolbox of every guy is every other guy, you know?
Yeah, no, that's incredibly true. I think even when they did win, well, actually that was until Darius came out. But I think if we were to go back and play like retro 2007 PCM format, Gladiator Beasts even before Darius are probably still really good. It's just that mechanic.
Yeah.
Just, like you said, having access to basically
anything. The best part about the deck, in my opinion, and it's a reason why it probably frustrates so many people playing against it, is because you open a Glad and you're going. You know what I mean? So, like a lot of people, if they open Brick and they're versing GBs, like they already lost because the tempo's there. Yeah. You just need to open up one, and you opened every card in your deck. Which I think is a real asset to play. If you're going to play a long tournament, I think the biggest thing, like especially with these Ultimate Time Wizards being top 8, is you just want to be able to play the game, you know, because you can't afford a brick and moves around. So that's a big reason I actually liked Gladiator. At least to touch on your original question.
For sure. I think that is a great transition to why play Gladiator Beast now. We have, all these insane combo decks that are kind of popping up. We even have a buddy who's a big on like Salvo that makes huge plays that people are it seems people are trying a little bit more to try new things while staying still close to home in terms of the Blackwings frog type engines and whatnot. But why would someone want to play Gladiator Beast? And this is perfect that Jake, you've been on the deck literally since the day you were born, and Morph, you said you started about a month ago, so this is a great perspective of why you stayed on the deck and then why you picked it up.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the reason you'd want to play the deck is in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's always been the deck that I feel like at all times I have the most secure feeling playing the entire game. Like every card, like Morph said, every card is just as long as you have a GB, you're live for your entire deck. So like your goal is as long as you don't open 0 GBs or too many GBs, you have a live game. You can probably control the game through any state. You can brutalize an opponent that drew subpar. And at the very least, you should always be in the game. And it's a deck that always feels like, even when you like lose the most wild games where your opponent's super high rolled, it usually still feels like, if you look through the replay, that there's maybe something I could have done somewhere here, a very technical choice with my interactions that could have changed the game because of how ridiculously flexible Gladiator Beast is. And because of that, I really think it does really reward you for putting in the hours with the deck. I don't know what you think, Morph.
So I'll try to be brief about my story with the Gladiator Beast deck, but I've been playing, Yu-Gi-Oh! Retro formats since, I don't know. I started playing in 2010, And I've always hated Gladiator Beasts. Just the way it was, I never really gave it a fair shake. It was like the stacks, just like you originally said, summon GB set 3, and I turned my brain off, and I'm like, I hate the stack. And didn't help. I played a lot of plant decks, but the long and short of that story is that upon playing the deck, I really enjoyed how, if I wanted to play a slower, controlled game or really dial it up and kind of high roll, go into a Secutor with minimal protection because I feel like it's necessary, or try and go into a Gazaris because I feel like I got to win the game. Like some decks, you're drawing the cards you have, and the best play is kind of right there. But since you have so many cards to tutor in your deck, you can really dial it up or dial it down depending on what you read from your opponent. So it gave me a lot of like expression that most decks I feel like don't give you. Felt like windups to me in a way. I played a lot of windup. I don't know if anyone has played that format before, but if I wanted to slow roll it with some windup rabbits and factories, I could play the slow game, or I could go balls to the wall and just Magician Shark and go nuts. Yeah. So it gave me options. Is my point.
I think Gladiator Beast is kind of similar. A lot of people think of it as, I don't even know how to describe it. It's, I guess, a control deck, right? But when I see people complain about Gladiator Beast, and here's a quick story. Anthony, if you end up watching this, I love you, buddy. But at my locals 2 weeks ago, someone said Gladiator Beast is terrible. They don't think it's reliable. They put it in maybe 8th place in terms of what we would consider like good decks. So probably like a B or C tier deck. I told him, I said, man, this deck's literally been topping or winning basically nonstop for the past year or so at this point. Like, you're just factually.
I think people want it to be good because it's not enjoyable. A lot of people find it not enjoyable to play against. It's easy to just disrespect it. Like when I started going to events, maybe like my first one was the R-Bet in New York, which coincidentally Gladiator Beast, like there was 4 on top. I was playing Quick Draw, and I did top that event, but my strategy against Gladiator Beast was I hope I don't play it because I'm not siding against it.
Strategies were going into.
I said it's not a real deck. I'm not siding for it. And then my first round I played BBs.
A lot of strategies were going into last year was, hey, this deck doesn't exist. I'm not going to worry about it because there's so many decks you need to worry about. But it's strange because it seems like every time you talk to someone in terms of whether it's through a YouTube video or in Discord chat or just at locals or something, and you talk to them about their decks or whatever, I would say the vast majority of the time, everyone's telling me, yeah, but I have a bad Gladiator Beast matchup. I hope I just don't play it. So
it's one of the scariest decks on any deck I've played. And just a lot of it, I get so scared. I don't want to harp on the traps on thing, but you almost feel helpless sometimes. If like if they have traps on against you, you're like, I guess I lose, And the flip side, as a Gladiator Beast player, sometimes you feel that way, but it's one of the few decks that could actually play Book of Moon too. So you have an inherent out to this card that can be super oppressive. So it's really nice.
So good, man. Being able to fuse face down is
insane. Indeed, it really is.
But yeah, it was just funny that this guy at my local was like Gladiator Beast, like this eighth best deck. I was like, hey, you're factually just incorrect. And he said something like, it's okay, I'll be incorrect. And then you won the Ribbit, and the very next week won the YCS. So it was just like funny to me. So we've talked a little bit about why people should play Gladiator Beast in terms of how the deck plays, but how does it stack up against the meta in terms of, obviously it has pretty good frog matchups all across the board. I do think Hero Frog is actually kind of a bad matchup from the beaters, and the discard traps are so difficult for this deck to handle.
Hot take, but I think a good forward player, I don't feel comfortable versus a good forward player, even with Gladiator. Because, sometimes, if they have to go swap, frog, dump, pass, and they don't know you're playing GBs, like, it's a good matchup, but it's still a scary one, I feel like. Sometimes they won't let you.
Yeah. I would use that same argument with Forg and Gigavise. Like, a very well-seasoned Gigavise player, can just sometimes crush you, because ultimately both of those decks are quite decks that are just if I have the heavier Trunade, you might just absolutely massacre them, and there's nothing they can do about it. And you besides that, you feel good into the matchup, but if they have one of those 2 cards, you're kind of boned unless you have the out. So.
And that's just how Yu-Gi-Oh goes, and that's how Edison's go. And
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
much you can do against that. I guess Gladiator Beasts do have the nice ability to, if it does become like really bad, I don't know, 80% Forbes or whatever, to be able to run the hedge guard to maybe help in some weird situation, but you probably just get 3-0 OTK.
Yeah,
But
yeah, for sure.
Gladiator Beasts
Giga,
do
Although,
have
yeah,
some ways to play
I
it.
don't think I'm as concerned about, but regardless, yeah, I agree. Some of the matchups, I don't like versing. I mean, granted, I tend to do very well against them, but I still think Blackwing they probably have a 60% against us, maybe 60-40. There's plenty of cards you could side in, definitely even it out, but
Yeah, I've had a
still
ton
a
of
bit
success
difficult.
against Black Wings recently, to be honest. And I think it might be because I did go back onto the triple dust tornado build. And I think a lot of times what we see when players don't like Gladiator Beast, they could be like Umorph, where they just never gave it a chance. But I think a lot of times it's more likely that they have given it a chance, but they're not very good with the deck. And they just do try to do these things where they just go summon Gladiator Beast, set 3 back row, and then pray. When in reality, they could just
mhm.
like set 1 Dust Tornado or 1 Trapstone Pass, and then next
Totally.
turn go full combo with protection
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Dust Tornado Trapstone.
Like I think sometimes it's just a way people are playing the matchups.
Yeah.
Because I'm so accustomed to the Blackwing matchup over so many years. Obviously, my build's a little bit more designed in a position to be good into Blackwings. I feel very favored into the Blackwing matchup, even game one, pretty consistently. The same with Vayu. Classically, Vayu was classically, I'd say, pretty even. We have a lot of good cards versus them, and they have a lot of bad cards versus us, but they also have some very broken cards versus us too. So like, there's a little bit of a back and forth there. Um, but Blackwing specifically, it's a huge playstyle thing, I'd say,
Oh yeah.
because if you can play in a way that makes it so Icarus can either never be live or never go +1 on you, you're probably cooking in the matchup. That's usually what'll bone you. And obviously oppression, right? But like, if you can play around that, you're gonna absolutely wreck them. Like, it's similar to, like, that's kind of why, like, I like the dust personally. But like,
Sure.
you can do those plays of where I can dust end phase. I don't even need to set a card off dust if I don't know what I want to. But I can purposely leave myself empty board on field,
Yeah.
and I can just go GB, like Tiger, blow up your guy, tag, blow up your, like, swing
Right.
bestie onto your back row. Like, you can do the same thing with trap stun, but like, unless I had a Prisma and they had 2 back rows, I'm only blowing up 1 back row. So like,
There's
that's
definitely there's this is a version of that in the traps on deck too, but I'm a big advocate of Ducks Radio in the matchup, so I'm not gonna
yeah,
fight back.
definitely.
But the
Yeah,
deck, on paper, I think in practice too, but definitely on paper. I mean, the deck
Yeah.
plays Shura, large monster, Sirocco, extremely large, multiple Kalutes. Like even Bora 1700 can be tedious at times.
yeah.
So I do think even with all the help of being able to play around Icarus and all that, it can be. I don't think we're favored at any point. It's more,
Yeah,
at
sometimes you could
best.
just lose due to, like you said, just something being too big. You don't have the answer. Which is strange because I'll tell you something no one's mentioned yet was the Machina matchup. And I know Jake, you said you've had some troubles with that a couple weeks ago, but I also have been getting absolutely lambasted by
Well,
Machina Gadget,
the,
whatever
the
it is.
Prisma version is just really sneaky. It has a pretty good, not pretty good, but it's sneaky good into it because obviously, if you side in Cyber Dragon, Prisma can
Yeah.
declare, turn into Cyber Dragon, right? Dump the Cyber Dragon, and now I can contact you. So it definitely helps the matchup a bit. That
Yeah.
build.
Yeah, no, I would definitely say Prisma has a slightly higher matchup versus that, especially because of those Cyber Dragon interactions. I do think regular Machina is actually a fine matchup. Like Machina with the Rykos and everything.
The
It's
gadget
the
version is the scariest one, I think.
Yeah, I think that Solidarity gadget one with the
Yeah.
fucking smashing grounds and all that shit. That's the
Mm-hmm.
that one's the abysmal one to play against a lot of
That's what I
times.
played at my
Yeah,
locals.
I versed it at the event, but thankfully it was this nice Swift 2-0, but that deck scares the hell out of me.
Yeah,
Solidarity is low key, just, I don't know,
yeah. So,
really hard to
so,
deal with.
so there was a guy that the Vegas weekend that he made within top 16, or so he made like he was like first in Swiss, I believe, and on the EWCQ Friday, He made top 16. Well, he made within top 16 if they did a top 16 on the day that I won. And he crushed me in Swiss in the EWCQ really bad. Bad enough that I switched up my side. I got paired against him again at the RBET the next day, and I beat him because of the side. I was like, all right, I feel justified now. But that matchup, like, literally made me switch up my side deck. It was so rough.
It is a terrible matchup too. Even if you're playing a Prismaless build, I mean, there's definitely some universe where it might even be worth siding in a Prisma. In addition to your Cyber Dragon, just to help the matchup. But
yeah, I definitely get that, and I totally thought about that.
Add a lens on
If you're going on Tiger and Secutor too, and now we've talked about some matchups. I know what's interesting to me more about your build, and I guess you had to make some concession. You're not maining the 2 Radiari, and I will say there's no high like going into Gazaris or Test Tiger into Secutor into double Radiari right afterwards. Did you ever find yourself thinking, man, I wish I had double Ready main?
Honestly, during the tournament, no. I definitely am not settled on it. You know, I'm not going to claim to be a Gladiator Beast master yet. You know, I had a very good showing, but I'm more of a deck builder, and this was just the pick I had for this event. But in my opinion, and from my experience in the matchup, like I hadn't found a real opportunity where I'm going double Radiari off Secutor too often. The one usually suffice, and the second they know I'm on GBs, they're kind of, at least like some of the, I played a forward player in Swiss, and the second he realized I was on GBs, he was salvaging back his fish forks to play around it between turns anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
to play. So maybe there is something into they're expecting the double main of Radiari, so then they just play differently.
I'm definitely open to throwing it back in, though. It's not something I'm like 100% certain on, but if I had to choose between, and this is not a dichotomy, right, where this has to be this way, but if I had to choose between the 2 Darius or the 2 Radiari in a build that plays Rhoda and 2 Prisma, I'm going to choose the 2 Darius all day because I just need to have, something can't happen to my 1 Darius.
I completely agree. I'll tell you, like, and I was probably crazy for this, but it turned out well. But like at the original Challenge Jump era Edison, I knew I couldn't sacrifice 2 Darius so badly playing the Prisma build that I conceded to going to 1 a quest, which seems sketchy, but I made it all the way to top 8 of that event. So, you know, I was just really careful with my quest. But that was a concession I ended up having to make because it just, and that wasn't at the time for Retiari. The graveyard hate wasn't as needed back then. I think it was like for like a Hopalomus main deck or some random
The best part I think about having 2 Retiari is just knowing that if I have to kind of go into a throwaway Retiari, I know there's another one in my deck. That's really the best for me.
Yeah, like if
I'm going double Radiari, it's more like, if I go Radiari here and it gets run over by an Armageddon next turn, like I don't care.
Yeah, like sometimes it's nice to throw something like Retiari or Murmillo into a couple back rows because you're like, okay, this isn't going to get a bottom list. I really need something that can hit, tag to a quest. So now when they bottom list, I get a guy back in hand. And Retiari is an example of something that does that, but it feels really bad if the one gets prisoned, you know? So.
Yeah, that's what I've always felt. I always like having the second one. And just being able to get under bottomless, I think, is actually wildly important for Gladiators, just to be able to get that attack off. But what I have changed, Jake, like I said, I've gone a little bit closer to your build. Inadvertently, I was kind of already doing this, but I ended up dropping one of my the 1 Prism I was running. But I'm also on double main Test Tiger, which I've liked, with the double Sandknight, but I am still maining the Secutor. I'll tell you, I found a lot of success in those situations that when you attack, and you tag into a, I guess, neutral game state, as in you can't get any advantage through any of the early games.
Just go Secutor just in case.
Yeah, just going into Secutor and saying, answer this card.
That completely changed my game.
Yeah, either answer this card or I'm getting a +4 next turn from the Secutor getting 2, and then the other monsters getting pluses when they come in as well. And I have found a lot of success that Secutor, active with its effect, forces people to do things they don't want to do because they lose otherwise.
That won me actually the finals of the Ultimate Time Wizard, in my opinion. Is that,
really?
You know, there's a point like you could probably read the VOD or whatever the replay, and this isn't necessarily the best example of it, but like, you go Cazares. I summon back in that situation a Laquari, and my second card could have been pretty much anything, right? Like it could have just been a Sam Knight. It could have been this. It could have been two Laquari, and like I hope I don't get brain. Like there's plenty of cards, but in my head I said, if he cannot out this Secutor, which I thought he couldn't because we're close to top decking, the upside is so high that I should just go into this card because it will win the game on the spot. And the downside is it gets run over and it's not in my deck anymore. Like I'm not drawing it. So I found it really, really nice to have the option to do it because, you're going into 2 GBs, like who cares what it is if it's getting run over,
Basically, yeah, and I've done that a lot of times, where like you said, just neutral tags. Hey, let's just see what Secutor does, and then they end up having to use like 2 or 3 cards to out one Secutor because they got to make these super awkward plays to get around it. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's such a high value play doing that and forcing that decision on them. Even though I side the Secutor, when I bring it in games 2 and 3, I do that kind of play all the time. So I definitely understand that. I think it's way too too good of a card to not have in a deck list. Ultimately, I was just blowing with the goal of my deck list, especially since I'm not playing Trap Stun. There's like not a world without Trap Stun where I feel comfortable into almost ever dropping it versus
I
Black
agree.
Wings and stuff, right? So
I
like,
probably wouldn't play the Secutor without Trapstone. Just
yeah,
cause.
obviously we side it, obviously, right? Card's way too good, but like, the goal was, well, I'm just gonna improve my game 1 versus Black Wings
Yeah.
Hero Beat value because I would have sided them out anyways. So
Yep.
Good, yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Is there anything you guys want to say specifically? We've talked a lot about like some of the matchups and why people should play Gladiator Beast. Any final words before we head out of here?
I think if you haven't tried the deck and you're a hater, at least give it a go. At the worst, you might have a more appreciation, at least a better appreciation for how to beat the deck. I found it before I started playing it. I thought the deck was so oppressive. Like I always assume there's War Chariot. I always assume you assume the worst. You assume so much about what the deck can do, and until you play it, you don't understand. There's a cap to how much is really going on back there. Just because they set 3 doesn't mean it's War Chariot, Judgment, Road when you have a heavy and like one monster.
That's true.
You should definitely give it a go. I think you'd have a better time versus the matchup. And at the worst, maybe you find a cool new deck to try.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I exactly what you said. If you don't like the deck, I think you at least try to play with it to, at the very least, learn the matchup. I know for anybody, the summon and GB like set 3, it's very intimidating, especially with the huge suite of spells and traps they have. But a lot of times, that GB player is holding on by a lifeline and hoping you don't go for a certain route, and like getting an understanding of like how that feels as the GB player, of you're like, oh man, there's like this and this that gets me. I really hope they don't go these ways, and you're just praying they don't go the way that like crushes you. Like it really gives you a better understanding for what it's like in their shoes and what kind of plays are more like maybe neutral and safer plays into the matchup that might help you improve the matchup in the future. If you don't want to play the deck, you want to just be better into it.
Yeah, and we know for sure that if Gladiator Beasts already weren't represented, they probably will be more represented moving forward. I think that's like another big reason, honestly, that Gladiator Beasts just don't do as well. They still seem to top every event, at least top 8 or top 16. But I think the reason that they don't like win more is just lack of representation. People are too afraid to move away from the Black Wings value frog piles to go for something like this.
I think there's also an actually really high skill cap to the deck that people do not understand. Like there's so many different things you could do with just Darius, or there's a couple weird plays even with Secutor. Like there's a lot of weird nuances with chain blocking and I don't know. There's a lot more depth to the deck than people realize, and I think that if some of the better players decided to give it a go and really give it a fair shake, you'd see a lot more
represents. Yeah, I hope it's the upcoming events that we start seeing some of those more high-profile players picking up the deck and saying, "Hey, this is actually really good." Start citing for it.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Well, That's 35 minutes. That's enough for me. If that's enough for you guys.
Yeah, this was cool. Thanks for doing it, and nice talking to you both.
Yeah, nice
Yeah,
talking to
yeah,
you.
yeah. Thanks for putting this together. Yeah, it was nice talking to you for the first time, Worth. It's been a pleasure. I've talked to Ma a ton, but yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it
Congratulations
was
to both of you
definitely.
again. Very, very big, prolific wins for the deck. That has a big following, but hopefully it gets bigger. But everyone watching, thanks for watching. Maybe I'll continue doing some more Gladiator Beast content. Maybe I'll even post my own list, which is a little whack right now, to be honest. Have a great day. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.